Crystal Rogers left her family's farm in Bardstown after dinner, telling her mother she would be back later that night. Her red 2007 Chevrolet Impala rolled down the narrow Kentucky roads toward the Bluegrass Parkway, passing fields she had known since childhood. She never returned. By the next afternoon, her car sat abandoned along the shoulder of the parkway with a flat tire, the keys still in the ignition, and her purse inside. Crystal was gone. Crystal was 35 years old, a mother of 5, and in a long-term relationship with Brooks Houck, a prominent local contractor. Friends described her as steady and devoted to her children. On July 3, 2015, she had spent the evening at her family's farm before leaving to meet Houck. When she failed to answer calls the next morning and did not show up to help with family plans for the 4th of July weekend, concern turned to alarm. Kentucky State Police located her Impala later that day along mile marker 14 on the Bluegrass Parkway. The vehicle showed no obvious signs of a violent struggle. A tire was flat, but investigators later determined the puncture appeared deliberate. There were no skid marks, no shattered glass, and no blood visible at the scene. The circumstances suggested the car had been placed there. Search teams combed Nelson County for weeks. Helicopters hovered over wooded hollows. Volunteers walked fence lines and creek beds. Cadaver dogs alerted in some areas, but no remains were found. Detectives quickly focused on those closest to Crystal. Brooks Houck acknowledged he had been with her the night she disappeared, telling police she had come to his home and later left in the early morning hours. Investigators pressed him about inconsistencies in his timeline. He maintained he had nothing to do with her disappearance. The case unsettled Bardstown. It was a small, tight community, accustomed to church picnics and high school football, not national headlines. As weeks passed without answers, suspicion deepened. Crystal's father, Tommy Ballard, became one of the most visible advocates for the search. He organized volunteers, gave interviews, and publicly accused Houck of involvement. The tension between the Ballard family and Houck's supporters grew sharper. 5 months after Crystal vanished, the tragedy widened. Tommy Ballard was hunting with his grandson on family property in November 2016 when he was shot once in the chest. The gunshot was precise. He died at the scene. Authorities ruled it a homicide. The killing intensified speculation that someone was trying to silence those demanding answers in Crystal's case. No one was charged in Tommy Ballard's death. Meanwhile, investigators continued to examine Houck's activities. In 2016, a grand jury declined to indict him. Years passed. Crystal was declared legally dead in 2016, but the case never closed. Law enforcement pursued digital records, phone data, and witness testimony. In 2020, the FBI joined the investigation, signaling renewed federal interest. In 2021, a major break emerged. A former employee of Houck's, Joseph Lawson, was charged with criminal conspiracy to commit murder and tampering with physical evidence related to Crystal's disappearance. Prosecutors alleged Lawson admitted involvement in moving Crystal's vehicle to the parkway. Court documents indicated he had described disabling the car and leaving it along the roadside to stage a breakdown. Lawson later pleaded guilty to conspiracy to commit murder in 2022, admitting he helped conceal Crystal's body. He did not publicly disclose the location. The following year brought sweeping indictments. In September 2023, a Nelson County grand jury indicted Brooks Houck on charges including murder and tampering with physical evidence. His brother, Nick Houck, a former Bardstown police officer, was indicted on charges of complicity and tampering. Prosecutors alleged Brooks Houck killed Crystal Rogers and conspired to cover it up, and that Nick Houck had assisted in hindering the investigation. Both men pleaded not guilty. Stephen Lawson, Joseph's father, was also indicted on conspiracy charges. The indictments confirmed what Crystal's family had long believed, that her disappearance was not random, but orchestrated. investigators stated that Crystal had last been seen alive at Hook's home. They alleged her phone activity ceased that night and that her body had been removed and hidden. Despite years of searches, her remains have not been publicly recovered. For Crystal's children, the legal developments brought both relief and renewed pain. They had grown up without their mother, attending court hearings as teenagers and young adults. The community that once whispered now followed courtroom proceedings closely. Bardstown had already endured other high-profile crimes, including the unsolved murder of police officer Jason Ellis in 2013 and the killing of Kathy and Samantha Netherland in 2014. Crystal's case became part of a broader narrative of violence that had shaken the region. As court dates approached, prosecutors detailed the evidence they intended to present: phone records, witness statements, and alleged admissions. Defense attorneys challenged the credibility of cooperating witnesses and the absence of a recovered body. The legal process moved slowly, shaped by motions, hearings, and scheduling disputes. Through it all, the central fact remained unchanged. On a summer night in early July, a mother drove away and never came back. Her car was found staged along a parkway shoulder, keys left behind as if she had stepped out only for a moment. Nearly a decade later, investigators allege that what happened next was a calculated act, followed by years of concealment. Crystal Rogers has never been found. Her case transformed a quiet Kentucky town into a place marked by suspicion and loss. It drew federal attention, fractured relationships, and led to multiple indictments against people once considered pillars of the community. The trials will determine criminal responsibility, but they cannot return what was taken from 5 children in the span of a single night. The search that began with volunteers walking through fields evolved into a complex prosecution built over years. Each development brought new scrutiny and renewed headlines, yet the absence at the center of the story remains. Crystal's name continues to echo in courtrooms and in the farmland where her family still waits for answers. Thank you for listening to The Lantern's Tale. Subscribe for more true stories, if you dare.